Multiculturalism. Now, I'm English. That means that I'm, just by the look of me, I'm Anglo-Saxon. Anglo-Saxon has two words, Angles and Saxons. Who were the Angles and the Saxons? Well, from the name, they came from Germany to Britain and pushed the Britons to the edges. Now, in the last video I did about the United Kingdom, we saw that the United Kingdom consists of four territories: Scotland, Wales, England, and Northern Ireland. And there is a lot of cultural diversity in the United Kingdom. So you could say that Britain has always been multicultural. We can go back to the Britons, the Angles, the Saxons, the Romans before them. We can say the Vikings, that's people from Norway and Denmark, took over large parts of what is now the United Kingdom. So the Danes created the Danelaw, the Norwegians were up in the north, and over the centuries there was more and more cultural integration. When William the Conqueror, who was a Norman from the north of France, conquered England, he created a system where all of the rulers were French and spoke French for many hundreds of years. And Anglo-Saxon became the common tongue of the lower classes. Over the years, there were more and more immigrants. There were Jews and Polish, and eventually there was even a Jewish prime minister, Benjamin Disraeli. So I wanted to start with this overview of longer history, if you like, because it seems to me that multiculturalism has come in for a bit of trouble over recent decades. When I was a young man and I went to Europe, I was always surprised by the cultural integrity, if you like, of France and Spain and Italy. You went to Italy and you saw Italian. You went to France, you saw the French. You went to Spain and you saw the Spanish. Whereas I was very proud of Britain's plural society. That pluralism came from a new wave of immigration. That immigration started after the Second World War, when Britain was really in a pretty bad state, and appealed to the ex-colonies for workers to come and work, particularly in the north of England. So there were waves of immigration starting with Caribbean people coming from Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean into England, and then there were plenty of Pakistanis that also took advantage of conditions to come. There had always been Indians, there were Hong Kong Chinese, and there were also immigrants from Somalia who particularly set up communities in the south of Wales. Now, this influx of immigration led to a rejection by some parts of English society, that is Anglo-Saxon English society. People like Enoch Powell, who was famous in his own time, who wanted to suggest that the cultural integrity of the United Kingdom and of England would be severely damaged by this influx of people. And I can remember watching him on the television saying the things that he said, and most people looked at him and scoffed. In fact, Britain was very proud of its multiculturalism in the 70s and the 80s. There had been bad times, particularly in the 70s, with gangs of skinheads roaming around and engaging in what they called packy bashing. But on the whole, people were proud of the fact that England, or the United Kingdom generally, included a wealth of different cultures, different religions, different traditions, and different food. It's left a lasting mark on British experience of food, for example. Almost every young British person has a taste for curry, for example, for Chinese food, for Italian food, for Vietnamese food, for Thai food. All of these qualities, food being a representation of culture, came into Britain. This also coincided with a time when the institutions of British society, and I'm going to take the television example, started to introduce new voices or different voices into their productions. So there was a famous newsreader called Trevor MacDonald, for example, and he was famous. He was the face of the news at 10, and nobody would have suggested that he was any less British than their next door neighbour. This change in the way English or Anglo-Saxon people looked at immigrants was a huge achievement. Going back earlier into the 70s, there were horrible programs on the television, comedy programs. Programs like It Ain't Half Hot Mum, which poked fun at the Indians, or Love Thy Neighbor. And these were substituted by much more knowing programs, such as Rising Damp later on, where the African figure in the engagements was more educated, more knowing, and more civilized than his rude, obnoxious landlord. Now, we're going to move on now because multiculturalism creates a plural society. Plural meaning that there are many voices and many different cultures within that society. And you can really see how deeply that was ingrained in Britain by the fact that the Conservative Party, no less, had at one time Rishi Sunak, Priti Patel, Sajid Javid, and the Labour Party has David Lammy, all of these people British. And even today, the Conservative Party has Kemi Badenoch as the leader, and she was born and grew up in Nigeria. I don't think people have a problem with this. I think generally people think that's just the way our society works. However, there is trouble on the horizon. The trouble on the horizon is with the new wave of immigration that began in the 21st century with migrants, economic migrants, or even people seeking political asylum from many different countries. And this wave of migration has changed the population of the United Kingdom dramatically. I don't mean it's changed the mix, the ethnic mix. I think the ethnic mix was fine to have this ethnic mix in the country, but it's certainly changed the sheer number of people that live in the United Kingdom. And this has caused all kinds of tensions on services, and it's certainly affected those areas of the United Kingdom where people have their own traditional communities, like working class areas, and poorer immigrants go and live in those areas. And it's certainly led to a kind of rejection of multiculturalism as a phenomenon. It's also been led a little bit by the fact that many people quite basically reject the principles of Islam, which is seen as an intolerant religion that is not in line with traditional British values. People don't like the way that Islam legislates for women, for example. They're heavily critical of Sharia law, and they worry about international Islamic terrorism. Okay, now, so this has been a brief review of multiculturalism in a plural society. And I think the United Kingdom continues to be a plural society. I think there continues to be a proud tradition of accepting people from different cultures and understanding them. And I think the only thing that's certain is that there will be more interesting changes to come in the future.